Good afternoon. This is University Neighborhood Housing Program. Today's webinar will cover the rent freeze program, which the acronym is referred to as the SCREE or DREE program, depending on what program you're eligible for based on disability or age. So we're going to go into the details onto like who can apply, how the application is processed, if you need to renew, when do you renew, and why that's so important. So we're going to hear directly from the Department of Finance today. We have a great partnership with Michael Sharp, our the outreach liaison at the Department of Finance. We've worked with Michael for numerous years, and UNHP has been able to ensure that our tenants who are eligible for these programs hear right away from the Department of Finance about the application process, about any appeal or anything that has to do with receiving this important housing benefit and ensuring that as many New Yorkers can remain housed and that their rent remains affordable. So we will go over all those details, but before I'm gonna pass it over to my colleague, Laura, who's gonna walk us over some of the information on what to expect about from UNHP. So I'll just finish the intro as we see on the agenda. Michael would then talk about the rent freeze presentation, and then you will hear again from Laura after. If you are following now live, please feel free to use the speaker view to see the slides. That may be easier for you to follow along. I know we have both staff and clients on this webinar. So some of our clients, if you're a senior and prefer the larger view, just increase the setting to make it easier for you to follow along. Go ahead, Laura.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I am Laura Guerrero, and I am the Housing and Financial Advocate at UNHP. At the Northwest Bronx Resource Center, we not only offer the community to help them apply for SPRE and DREE, as Jamila had explained before, but we also do a lot of other services to help the community, and those are housing, and apply to New York City Housing Lottery, and help them create an account and be able to explain to them the process and how to do that. We also offer foreclosure prevention with referrals to Legal Aid Society. We also do referrals to tenant support units and to help them to resolve any problems they have with the landlords. We also give direct referrals to part of the solution, better known as POTS, so they could do the SNAP applications for their benefits. We also help them do referrals for financial counseling if they have any issues or questions regarding the credit history or how to keep their credit. And we also have a financial literacy workshop in our YouTube channel at UNHP 83. You're more than welcome to watch it. It's very educational. And we also have a program for first-time home buyers assessment, and to see more or less how close you are from purchasing your dream house. We have reached over 9,600 residents since launching in July 2012, and we are here to continue to help the community get better. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, go ahead, Jamila.
Thank you, Laura. So in addition to this webinar, you have access to all of these services. So at the end, we'll tell you what's the best way to reach us. But if you want to start taking notes, our phone number is 718-933-2539, and we'll put that in the chat as well. UNHP is working virtually because of the pandemic. So a lot of these services are over the phone, over email, or through Zoom sessions like this one. So let's get going. Michael, I know you don't need our slides. So I will let you share the screen to the Department of website.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction and for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here and to share information with your audience and for the partnership that we've had over the years. It's great to work with UNHP as they do work to service the Northwest Bronx. Today, we're going to talk about the rent freeze program. And we're just going to cover some basics so that if you are living in the Bronx and have tuned in, wondering what this is all about, by the time we're done today, you should have a good idea of what the program is and if it applies to you. So we're going to consider what the rent freeze program is. We'll talk a little bit about how it works and also why it can be such a valuable benefit. One of the best resources for information about the rent freeze program is the Department of Finance website. But here's the challenge. The website is huge. And sometimes just going there, you might not navigate your way directly to the parts that you're looking for. So today we're going to show you how to use that website with a few basic moves. And this way you'll always have the information available to you. So with that in mind, I'm going to now share my screen, and I'll spend most of the time behind the screen, as it were, as we share this information. And so let me just do that now. Now you should be seeing a Google search page on your screens. If you are, you can give me a nice thumbs up. Thank you very much. And I'm going to just make a couple of moves here. So the Department of Finance website, well, how do you get to it? Well, there is, of course, a URL for it, but you know what I do when I want to get to the Department of Finance website? I simply type in NYC-DOF. And when you type that in, this Department of Finance most time will come right up for you, right at the top of your screen. And when you select this, it'll bring you here. This is the homepage of the Department of Finance. Now, as we mentioned before, look, there's a lot of information here, but not to be intimidated by that. A couple of ways that you can get to the rent freeze program. First of all, you can just type the word rent freeze in the search box, and it'll take you to the page. But we're going to show you another way, and hopefully you can always remember this, because no matter whether you're talking about renter benefit programs or even homeowner programs, by going to this section right here that says ways to save, you'll find your way there. And that's really what we're talking about today, how we can save in our rent expense going forward. We'll just mention this briefly, that you may not be aware of it, but up in the upper right-hand portion of the website, there is a button that says translate. When you hit that, you see a number of different languages that the website can be instantly translated to. And if there's another language that you like to read the information in other than English, you see you have quite a large selection. Well, let's just go here to ways to save. And right away, you see that we have 4 selections here. Some things dealing with condos and co-ops and parking, but right here is the rent freeze program. This orange button is always a sign of rent freeze. And here, related to the rent freeze program, is another portal. It says Landlord Express Access Portal. Now, why am I showing you this? Well, as you'll see, the rent freeze program involves you, the Department of Finance, and your landlord. But when the landlord has something that he needs to know from the Department of Finance, he or she can come directly to us. We only mention that because you are never the person that has to contact the Department of Finance on behalf of a landlord. They have their own way of connecting with us. I just want to put that in the beginning. So let's talk about the rent freeze program. Let's talk first a little bit about what it is. I'm just going to select this, and it brings you to the main rent freeze page. And just to give you a little bit of an overview of what we'll do, you see across the top, there are just a number of tabs here. We won't even use all of them today, but the most 80% of the information that you need is right here. In fact, all of it is right here across the top, and we're going to hit a few of those tabs, not all of them, just to give you the basic information. And then we'll see what it is, how it works, how to apply. So first of all, what is the rent freeze program? Well, you may know the name by other terms. It's commonly called SCREE and DREE. And here's what these acronyms stand for. It's the Senior Citizen Rent Increase Exemption. And the other acronym, DREE, is the Disability Rent Increase Exemption. And this is a program that was designed to help people stay in their homes as rent and cost increase, for you to be able to stay in your home as one gets older. Let's say as you now receive Social Security, retire, your income is fixed, but your rent is not fixed. It keeps going up. But the rent freeze program will do that. It will freeze your rent expense and therefore enabling you to handle that. The longer you're in the benefit, the more valuable it is. That's why it's so valuable. There's some people in the benefit in the program now that joined 20 years ago. The rent they pay is the same rent they paid when they joined. 20 years ago, that's the rent they're paying now. So we really want to get the word out, because some of you have lived in your apartment for 10, 20 or more years. You'll reach the age now where you are qualified. Maybe the kids are grown, you're still here, this is still your home, you want to keep that apartment. But now as income is frozen, you have concerns as rents are rising all around. We'll tell you how you can qualify for the program. Now, let's sort of get right into this and go to the first tab that says, am I eligible? When you talk about who's eligible for the program, we want you to just think about three different things. First of all, who you are. That includes your age. That's a requirement. Where do you live? This benefit is only for certain types of housing. And what is your income? That is your household income. So if you have knowledge of these three things and can document them, then if they are all within the criteria of the program, you can join. So let's see what these qualifications are. You must be at least 62 years of age, be the head of a household, as the primary tenant named on the lease or rent order, or been granted succession rights to that apartment. It must be a rent stabilized, rent controlled, or rent regulated hotel apartment. That's very important. Rent stabilized, rent controlled, rent regulated hotel. You have a combined household income of $50,000 or less. That's all of the income earners in the house. You combine it, 50,000 or less, and you're spending more than 1/3 of your household income on your rent. So to just put that in figures, if you total all the income of the household and it's $3,000, your rent needs to be at least $1,000 to qualify for this program. That's for the senior citizen benefit. Now, a little bit more about income, and this is sort of a repetition that we mentioned. It says, when the combined household, it's 50,000 or less, and you're spending 1/3 of it, and you must, here's the note that why we came to this page, because of this note. It says you must report the income for yourself and all members of your household, including family members who live in your apartment in the year before your application. And for instance, if you're applying this year in 2021, we're going to want to know the income for 2020. And here's a note: if you rent a bedroom to someone, and you do not need to include their income, but you must report the monthly amount you receive from them toward the rent. And understand that? Okay, great. So let's just go back here and just go down to the disability program. And it's very similar as far as income is concerned. That's the same. Here, you must be at least 18 years old. You don't have to be a senior. 18 years old, named on a lease, just like the other program. But here, you're receiving SSI or SSDI. You have been assessed as being a disabled person. Now, you may have some difficulties or disabilities. Let's say I need a Cesar ride or other things like that, or I qualify for senior Metro cards and things like that. But here we need the actual federal disability to be awarded to you for you to be in this program. Okay. Now, one quick note, when you're talking about the SCREE program, we handle that for rent stabilized and rent controlled apartments. If you happen to live in a Mitchell-Lama apartment or in an HDFC housing development, then you would apply for SCREE with the Department of Housing Preservation and Development, with HPD. At the same token, if you live in Mitchell-Lama or an HDFC apartment and you're applying for the DRE program, you can still send it to the Department of Finance. So that's just one little added note. For SCREE, for seniors, if you're applying based upon your age, then we would handle it in a rent stabilized, rent regulated apartment or rent control. If you're in one of those other type of developments, Mitchell-Lama, HDFC, then you would apply for SCREE through through HPD. All right, not to get too much in the weeds on that, but just a good note for you to have. Here are some apartments that are not actually eligible for the program. Public housing or NYCHA, units that are partially or fully paid by a Section 8 voucher. So if you're in Section 8, that's a benefit program. You wouldn't be eligible to add this benefit program on top of that. Non-rent regulated apartments, such as apartments in private homes or cooperative buildings, it's not available to you. And also sublet apartments, even if it is a rent stabilized building. If you're leasing your apartment, then you're not eligible for the DRE and SCREE program. All right, let's talk a little bit about freezing the rent. We mentioned that the total household income needs to be $50,000 or less. How do we calculate your income? Well, all sources of income are included to calculate income and determine your eligibility. SCREE and DRE uses both taxable and non-taxable income to determine eligibility according to legislation governing both programs. So there are laws that cover this. However, gifts and inheritance are not included as income. Now, what deductions are allowed in calculating income for the program? And this is very, very important. Federal, state, and local taxes and Social Security taxes are deducted from our income calculations. So what does that mean? That means when you look at your gross income, all the household members, you may be over $50,000, but we're going to do the calculating a little different. We're going to deduct the taxes that you pay in, and we're going to look at your income after the paid taxes. So what point are we trying to make? Don't disqualify yourself. If you're not sure if your income is under the threshold, and it may be close, why not send in an application? Allow the department processing unit to look at your income, all of its different sources, and do the calculations for you. You may be pleasantly surprised that you do qualify after all of these things are considered. Now, what type of deductions are not allowed or a part of the program? Medical expenses, Medicaid premiums, business loss or capital loss. And so one of the easiest ways to show all of this, of course, is to submit a tax return. If you don't submit a tax return, then submit any documentation that you have that shows the income of your household and you yourself, Social Security statements, pension statements, you have IRAs or annuities, any IRS forms that you get, W-2s, 1099s, just send it all in. The processing unit knows how to work with all of those documents and see what your eligibility is. So that's how you would qualify or have your income calculated on that side of things. Let's look at some charges that are not covered in the program, because we said we were freezing your rent, but there's some things that we don't cover. Services such as a doorman, a maid, or janitor, new equipment in your home. Let's say you make an arrangement with your landlord to give you a new refrigerator and a range, and for that he wants to add something to your rent. Well, that individual apartment improvement is something that that's between you and him. The rent freeze program does not cover that. And you might say anything that might be considered a luxury type thing with your apartment. We don't cover or freeze that. And we don't include utility cost in it at all. But there are things that we do include in the rent freeze. For instance, if your particular apartment or development, they want to do a major renovation to the development or the apartment. If there's a roof or new elevators, a new lobby, and they take these steps, they say that for the greater good of the property, and they get permission from the regulatory agencies that handle that type of thing to raise the rent. They do it by the apartment. They're called major capital improvements. Well, those, since you really have no say in that, whether it's done or not, it's between the landlord and those that run the development. Those charges are covered. So any major capital improvements will be covered. If they want to charge additional $50 to your rent because of these improvements, you simply send that form in to us, and we are able to work with the landlord to get that adjusted. Now let's just go back for a moment, because you might be, and I should have mentioned this earlier, exactly how does this program work? How does your rent get to be frozen? Well, here's the arrangement is this. The rent freeze program really has three stakeholders. You yourself, of course, you provide a rent to your landlord. Now, on the other hand, your landlord each year pays the City of New York property taxes. The property that your development is on, it has a tax bill, and they pay that each year. And they pay it through the Department of Finance. Now, what happens in the rent freeze program is that every time your landlord legally can raise your rent, and it usually in a 1 or 2 year lease, they apply for rent increases, and you hear about that. It comes, they send you that increase. Instead of you sending the landlord more money in rent, we give the landlord what's called a tax credit. So he can pay a little less in his property tax, and it offsets what you would normally send as an increase in your rent. So while he doesn't get more, or she doesn't get more money from you in rent, they don't pay as much in property tax. If you view it like a little bit of a seesaw. Your rent stays the same. And what happens is their property tax bill goes down. Instead of getting that extra money from you, they get to send the city less. So we want you to understand that, because at no time should you feel that the rent freeze program is somehow taking money from your landlord. And with that in mind, they don't get to say whether you join or not. They don't get to say whether you apply or not. If you apply and are approved, they are notified, and they must, by law, follow suit on that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Another thing that's not a matter in this program is your status as far as immigration is concerned. Doesn't matter. Has no impact on whether you're approved or whether you can apply. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about how to apply.
Excuse me, Michael, I have a question. So what you're saying is that many New Yorkers already can benefit from this program, and they may not, because they may already be paying more than 1/3 of their income on rent, because we all know that rent is extremely high across the city. So many New Yorkers are already eligible, and that their landlord is not missing out, because once their rent is frozen, they would still get that rent increase. It's just that it wouldn't come from the tenant, it would come from the Department of Finance as a credit. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we want to make sure that anyone that's eligible, either because of the age, as you just explained, or the disability, if they're 18 or older, attempts to apply, even if they think their income is over the 50,000. I see there's a question, Michael, here, so I think it's probably coming to you, but it's from the person on the phone. So if you can press *6, I believe you will be able to mute yourself.
The issue is that we have landlords who complain that they have to wait, in a sense, wait for the money. When does the landlord get their tax reduction from the city?
That's a good question. They, in their tax bill, I'd say there's no money that's going to exchange hands. We're not going to send them anything, but it's usually in the tax bill that they have coming up. They'll see the amount already reduced. So that credit is applied to the upcoming bill. So like the next tax bill, some of them will pay, let me see, it's probably maybe in December, or let's put it another, let's go with the new tax year, July. So if you join the program sometime between now and let's say April or whatever it might be, we have that record, and when they get their July tax bill, the credit will already be there. So, and technically, they say they're waiting for it, but what it is that instead of getting money from the tenant each month, they have to wait to maybe realize that benefit when they pay the tax bill. But they're not. It's not. I can't speak for every landlord. So I guess sometimes that cash flow might present a problem for them. But I think the key takeaway is we're talking about the law. They may have a problem with the way the law works, but it's not your problem as a tenant. You're within your rights to apply to the program. To my knowledge, they only get this tax credit when they're paying taxes. So yes, you may not realize the benefit until you have to pay out. But yeah, sometimes those conversations can intimidate a person from applying, and I hope it doesn't. I hope it doesn't, because in the end, the landlord is getting a credit that offsets what he would have gotten from you on a monthly basis.
And if I can just
Trying to-
add to that, is that, and Michael's gonna show us a little later, that there's a section on the Department of website where you can see the weekly reports. So the tenant can go in and see if their benefits have been approved. So as soon as the tenant is approved, they're no longer liable for that rent increase. So if needed, at UNHP, what we recommend sometimes is that they take a printout of that and show it to their management company and say, like, I'm already approved for SCREE, and here is the benefit, until the letter that DOF will mail out to the tenant comes in. And if the landlord continues to persist that they must pay the difference, at that point, you can also connect them to a tenant support specialist, because it's almost a form of harassment that should be addressed in writing.
Yeah, the at the outset, we mentioned that other little tab on the Department of Finance website. It's the it was the Landlords Express portal. They have their any grievance and anything they need to any matter of concern. There is a whole section of this website dedicated to that. They have their own forms, their own way to connect with us. They never have to use you as a tenant as their advocate, ever. And so please don't, if you've been taking that stress on, and we know when you're talking about the person that owns where you live, you step carefully. But they have their own access to us. As long as you have communication from us, that is if you have that letter that we will send both to you and to them, they get it directly. They don't have to get it from you. You have the legal right to pay your frozen rent. I hope that's somewhat helpful. Okay, it's a good question. Let's move along now to we'll talk about the application process. We'll take a look at a few things here, talk a little bit about renewing the program, and then we can open it up for more questions and answers. For first-time applicants, here's the information that we want you to send. Your proof of age. It could be any of these type of forms, baptismal record, passport, birth certificate, proof of income. We mentioned this before. Throw it all in the envelope, as it were. And we're going to do the calculations here. And for those who are applying for the disability benefit, you send your award letter regarding your disability assessment, and of course the income information regarding what you're receiving with SSI or SSDI. When it comes to renewing the benefit, the same thing. We'll already know who you are, so you don't have to send identification again, but income information, and also you'll send in proof of where you live. Now, on the initial application, you're going to send us 2 leases, your current lease and also the prior lease. So it's 2, one, the lease you have now and then your prior lease. And that helps us to calculate where we'll freeze your rent. Most of the time it's where it is. Occasionally it's a little bit lower, but you send us those 2, and that's basically all you need to send. In fact, let's take a look at it's the wrong one. The application for just a brief moment, because we're going to get into something that shows us that a little bit more, a little bit deeper. Let's take a look at a SCREE form. Now, and you can see this is all through that same website page. This is the application. We're just showing it to you for this reason. It lets you know that it's a very simple process. You're going to tell them about yourself, social security number, name. You're going to tell them about where you live. This is the address. Here's something that we are asking people to do. It's not required, but it does help a lot. Email address. It just helps us to be able to contact you, and also opens up other ways for us to engage with you, as we'll show a little bit later on. Here's where you check off the different boxes about your income. You don't need a calculator, just put a guesstimate here or leave it blank. We have the paperwork, so we're going to figure that out. Now, this section is something I was going to spend a minute on. It says a tenant representative information. Now, what is this? Well, a tenant representative is someone who you trust that can help you with this application process. For those who have trouble just remembering to apply and to reapply, and you generally reapply for rent stabilized units when your lease is up. It's a little bit different for rent control. There are not many of them out there. But when you have a new lease, you know you have to reapply. But what happens? Sometimes you can forget. Now, we will send you notifications, but if that proves to be a problem, sometimes with some of our neighbors, keeping track of these things are difficult. A tenant representative, a partner like UNHP, they can be your tenant representative, and you'll put their name and contact information here. And what does that do? That means every time that we reach out to you, that we need to hear from you, we're going to let them know also, so that they can call and so that they can assist and they can help you submit what you need to submit in a timely fashion. The other parts of the application are your other household members. You're going to provide their proof of identity and their income information. Finally, check off the type of home or apartment it is. Sign and date it. If you are doing it for someone as the power of attorney, you provide that information as well. And that's basically it. The balance of the next page of the information is just a summary or reminders of how all of this works. So it is rather simple to get these things, these applications filled out and put in. It's just simple information. Now, I'll just share something very briefly with you regarding the program, because we've been through a difficult period in COVID. And what has happened is some individuals who have been in the program, because of whatever circumstances they're facing, they didn't reapply. They didn't send in the application. Now, what happened during COVID is that they stopped revoking the benefit. It's usually a 6-month grace period. And if you don't apply within that 6-month grace period, you lose the benefit. Well, that process stopped during COVID. And you can imagine that that was a great benefit to many. But what has happened is some individuals maybe didn't see the letters coming in saying it's going to be revoked, it's going to be revoked, and they have not as yet reapplied. So we want to just take this opportunity to say, please reapply. You see, what happened during COVID is that we didn't revoke any benefits, but the landlords would not receive that tax credit until the application has been renewed. So we just read a little bit here what we have on these notes. It says, until you renew your benefit, the landlord will not receive the tax abatement credit. It says beyond the benefit end date or the end of your lease. Once your renewal application is approved, your landlord will receive the tax abatement credit retroactive to the time the benefit ended. See, he's not going to lose out. They're going to send him these benefits, even though they have been a bit delayed. But if that doesn't happen, then you are going to have your rent go up and you can owe arrears because he's no longer getting that tax benefit. For instance, let's take a little example. Tenant XYZ has a legal rent amount of $1,000. In other words, the landlord has a right to charge them $1,000 by law, but her frozen rent is $700. So that means that she's been in the program a little while. The rent has been going up, but not her rent. Her rent is frozen. And the landlord receives the tax abatement credit for the difference between the legal and the frozen rent, the difference between $1,000 and $700 or $300 a month. So now if a tenant fails to renew the benefit, they are at the risk of seeing their monthly rent amount go from $700 to $1,000. And in addition, the tenant will owe the landlord the amount corresponding to the tenant access credit, the tax credit for the last 6 months since the benefit end date. So you say, oh my goodness, don't be alarmed. All you have to do is send in a renewal application. That's it. And so we wanted to take a moment to just emphasize that so that you will reapply. You say, well, I haven't gotten a letter saying that I'm going to have this revoked. At some point, these provisions due to COVID are going to sunset. And so all we're encouraging you to do, if you're in the program, just reapply as you always have. If your lease is up, send in the renewal. UNHP can help you with that. In fact, we get renewal applications from them on a weekly basis. So if you have any questions about your status and things that are going on, take advantage of the information that's been shared with you. They are housing professionals. They can help you navigate whatever situation that you're facing to find out maybe the best thing that you can do. Sometimes you'll have a situation where it has been a bit difficult. There are even people within the Department of Finance, ombudspersons that can work with special situations. If you're beyond the 6 months, if you're 8, 9, 10, going on to a year, we're going to look at all of those things and make a ruling on an individual basis. So by all means, do that. A few things that we want you to keep in mind. Well, here is that application again. Very simple to fill out. Remember to send your lease. If it's the first time you're applying, your current lease and your previous lease, and income information. Send us income information. This is what we'll need to process your application. So let's go back to our website now. We mentioned that you can find out the status of your application. There are a number of ways to do that, but let's take it here. There's a weekly tenant applicant report, and let's look at the Bronx, and you'll just see what that looks like. So if you've applied and you've heard from us, you'll have a letter letting us know that it's in, you're being processed, you receive it, you'll receive a docket number. And this report is organized by docket number, and you can see the status by docket number. None of your personal identification information is here, but just your docket number. You can see if it's been approved, you can see the amount. And also it's good to look at, in some of these cases, the difference between the legal rent and the rent that someone's paying is phenomenal. Here's a person probably been in the benefit for a very long time. Their legal rent is $900, but their frozen rent is $255. So when we talk about it being valuable, it is very much so. If you have any issues navigating this, because we know not everybody on the call is as savvy on the computer as some, UNHP once again can help you do that. And you can go out and you can go, if you are able to do that, you can just simply print the page where your docket number is, get the report of your status. And there is another way to go about doing this as well. Some individuals have made their own a rent freeze account. They have their own portal to sort of check their status by joining this TAP. It's you put your username and your email address, and you'll have access to your account on a real-time basis, what's happening with your application. So I've talked a long time. So maybe it's time for me to take a break and see if you have any more questions out there for me.
There are a few questions, but thank you, Michael, for going over all that information and reminding us how beneficial this program is. That example that you just showed, that tenant is saving over $700 in rent every month, which means that that's disposable income that could be used for something else. So that's the real impact that we want to make sure that as soon as someone turns 62, or if they're over the age of 18 and are disabled, that they apply for the program. The worst that can happen is that they can be denied, but at least you attempt to apply. As long as you're not receiving Section 8 or NYCHA, as Michael mentioned, go for it, because it would make a difference. So there's a few questions here. One is, what happens if a tenant didn't send the renewal application for SCREE due to a mental illness, even though they qualify for the referral and are still in the same unit? What happens in those cases? Do they have to reapply because the benefit has lapsed? Like it sounds like it's been several years since the last renewal.
Well, if it's been several years, it likely will be a matter of reapplying. The grace periods and time periods that we can look back and perhaps undo something or fix something, that is regulated by law. But if you're not quite sure, send in an application. Send in either one. Send in the renewal or initial. We will see what you have and then respond accordingly. If you know it's been years, it would be an initial application in most cases, because there is a hard cutoff for how far we can go back and sort of reinstate something. But if you're not sure, the key thing is send something in. Let us hear from you. And then you can go from there. If there's not this program, maybe there's another program that you are going to qualify for because of circumstances. But by all means, send in an application.
And to add to that question, Jamelia and Mike, does the rent go back to the regular amount as before it was frozen? Because I think that was part of the question as well. Does it stay as it was frozen before when they apply as an initial, or does it go back to regular rent as an initial?
If they apply as an initial, it would be frozen where it is, where we received the new application. But I always say this: if you have a really special situation, that's what the ombudspersons are there for. And I probably should show you that even though you may come to UNHP, they also work with the ombudsperson. Let me see, where's that information?
While you look for that tool, Michael, I would just add that I would say apply for the renewal if you have the docket number first to make the appeal so it can go back. If you submit an initial application, you're giving up on that previous frozen rent, and it's going to be frozen at the new asking rent for that enrollment period. So I would say renew and make an appeal, Andrew. That would be the best way, I think, I would to handle that situation.
Yeah, see, once again, under the contact us, there's several ways that you can come and deal with us, but we have the ombudspersons for both DRE and SCREE. They're very good and very thorough. And if there's any way that their actual names are actually here, we know them. And if there's any way that that under law, you can have the benefit reinstated for yourself, they'll certainly look at this. They work under the Taxpayer Advocate's Office. So that keyword advocate is part of what they do. They're here to sort of help you navigate the laws that regulate these programs to get the best outcome for you.
Michael, there's another question related to the landlord not returning the renewal lease signed back to the tenant. How should that situation be handled when it comes to a renewal of the rent freeze?
Happens a lot. Happens a lot. Let me just see here. I'll show you. There is a form that you can send in along with your application that basically says, they didn't send me a lease. And we will approve your application if it is that, hold on a second, if it is that you qualify, but the landlord won't get a more tax credit until they provide their end of the information. So let's see here, what do I need? Okay, here, I'm sorry. So under other forms and applications, you see certification of no new renewal lease form. It says use this in place of a lease if you have not received a lease from your landlord. So there's a way to deal with that as well.
Perfect. Another question, is there a limit as to like how many times you can renew SCREE?
It was
Or
already
the
answered.
rent-freeze program?
Yes,
Well, I
yes,
think
you
it's
I already
worth
answered.
repeating it. I think it's worth repeating it for everyone. So their
Okay.
limit, Laura?
No, there is no limit. As long as you qualify, you can renew every time your lease is up. There is no
Yeah.
limit to it.
You still live in a rent stabilized apartment and you still you're not going to be under 62 anymore, right? and if your income still qualifies, you can keep reapplying.
Yeah, and to that point, I'll mention that if there's a tenant that originally applies under DREE because they're not 62, once they turn 62, then they will be converted to the SCREE program. So then they will continue enjoying that benefit. And like Michael said, they cannot be under 62 at that point. And if for any reason that tenant moves of that unit into another apartment that is still rent regulated, then they would reapply at that new address.
They can even transfer the benefit. See at the top here, apartment benefit transfer application. This form, if you've moved into another rent regulated unit and would like to transfer your SCREE benefit. So there's some calculations that are involved with that, but that's also something you can do.
And in that case, Michael, when they transfer the benefit, would the Department of Finance look at the previous frozen rent or the new rent at this new apartment?
Okay, well they're going to, you will take your frozen rent, but we'll only provide, I guess, the benefit that we've been providing. For instance, if I live in an apartment that was $500 a month and I get it frozen, I find another rent regulated apartment that's $2,000 a month. My rent doesn't stay frozen at $500.